Everybody has 24 hours in a day, right? And we all have a capacity level that we can handle. And when you're at that capacity level, you've got to shift something off. And if you don't have a TC, then that's where you can start shifting off. You could get a TC and start shifting off.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. Today, from my guest, from commanding a world of CEO level operations to the personal grit of a military family life, today's guest has done more than just navigate the real estate market. She's elevated the entire experience. She's a strategist, a connector, a storyteller, and most importantly, a realtor with heart and intention. With a master's degree, a sharp mind for marketing, and a discipline honed as a military spouse, she understands the pressure, the pace, and the emotional weight of moving because she's lived it herself. After years of running a successful transaction coordination company, she stepped into the spotlight herself, building relationships, leveraging technology, and creating a concierge-level experience for her buyers and sellers across Northeast Florida. She's now part of one of the most respected teams in the region, the Debbie Tufts Group with Engel Völkers First Coast, where excellence isn't a goal, it's a standard. Get ready for the honest, tactical, and deeply inspiring conversation with a woman who doesn't just sell homes, she builds trust, crafts seamless experiences, and helps people feel at home. Please welcome Tiffany Freeman to the show.
Wow, I feel like so special. That was awesome.
I have a little trick to that. I don't hide it because I'm really... And it'll lead into Lunch and Learn that I'm having next week. And hopefully you can attend if you're free at lunchtime on Tuesday.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right here in our conference room down the hall. But I've really focused in putting a lot of the stuff of the show into ChatGPT. I'm using ChatGPT. There's other Perplexity, others, but using the AI.
Yes.
And, I always do my due diligence on everybody before they come on the show. I think I've heard podcasts and I've been on podcasts where you go live and the host doesn't know anything about you. And they're like, oh, tell me about yourself. I'm like, dude.
Where do I start?
Yeah, exactly. I was at lunch yesterday with some realtors and Tom asked me, he goes, hey, Tracy, tell everybody about yourself. Well, everybody at the table already knows me.
Yeah.
Right. So I've been in the mortgage business 20 years. All right. That's what I do. But I load everything. What I started doing recently, instead of writing my own intro, I said, let me take the bio. And so what I did for you is I went on LinkedIn and I went on, there was one other place you had a bio on. It might've been the website or something, somewhere there. But I upload all the versions. I think the bio you submitted on the bio. So I uploaded that in ChatGPT and I said, hey, Tiffany's coming on the show tomorrow, and it knows everything about my podcast because I upload the transcripts and everything. So I said, I need a powerful, compelling, inspirational intro, and that's what it creates.
That's awesome. ChatGPT is amazing. I'm like really leaning into it right now.
Yeah,
I love it.
You do. I think in the one tip I got from this gentleman I got coming next week, it's actually the second time he's done it. AI is looking for AI. Mm-hmm. So if you're in the business of real estate or any business where you're using social media and you want people searching you and hopefully find you over others, you need to be using AI in all your stuff, including your bios. That was go on and you put in there what you type in your version of your bio and then say, make, whatever you want to do, put a pizzazz on it and let AI rewrite what you wrote and then stick it in the your bios because it's looking for AI language.
Yeah.
It recognizes its own language.
That makes complete sense. That's so interesting.
Which is kind of interesting because it's learning from you all the time to be more like you. But that's what this AI expert's coming in next week for this Lunch and Learn.
That's so cool.
He is actually developing. There's someone in Australia that started it, but he does not far. But the only one in the United States right now that we know of, he is actually working on AI home search, where you can have a ChatGPT conversation. Just like you, if I was the buyer.
Like when we're screening a buyer.
Yeah. And you're asking, hey, well, how many bedrooms do you think you need? You just start typing in that and have a conversation, and then it starts bringing up listings behind it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a game changer, right?
I forget, there was a stat the other day. I tried to save it. Someone put up the amount of people who are now using, or just in the last couple of months, right, are going on the AI instead of going to Google. You know?
I definitely have been leaning more towards ChatGPT than Google.
Yeah.
You just get a more complete answer. And I love that.
Well, you get the answer.
You get the answer. And I
Or
love that you
we
can,
hope it's the answer.
okay, give me the sources. Like, how'd you find that information? And it'll give it to you. And then I have sources behind it, right?
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, and then Lyman is his name, is coming next week with Deli. That's the name of his company. If you go on usedeli.com, for any listeners, usedeli.com, or if you are listening to this live or hear this before Tuesday the 27th, text me and we'll go and come to the lunch and learn. But he's going to basically explain it. And it's just simply, he calls it a widget. He just sticks it on your existing website. He just does some code in the background. Boom, it's on there. You don't have to do a whole new website or anything. So people still have the choice to do the manual search, or they can have a conversation, like, because people are migrating over. Because I think in the next, I was going to say 3 or 4 years, I don't think it's going to be that long, before all your websites are going to change. You're not even going to have that. They're going to go on there and just start typing away.
I think it's much more conversational. And I think that's what people like, is you can just say what you want to say. You don't have to word it in a certain way for it to understand, really. And it's amazing. And I think that for home searches especially, it'll be really interesting to watch that.
So here's some of the snags that it has is AI only knows what's the conversation. So one of the examples he uses, like, I want to live near the beach. Well, near to the beach to you and near the beach to me are two different things.
That's a good point.
And so it needs to start it. So obviously he's out here right now. Obviously he's trying to, raise bigger capital, put bigger people on it. But when he wants agents out there, start using it, because the more we start talking to it, the more it's going to teach itself of what near the beach is, because he's from Jacksonville too. He talks about, like, it doesn't know when you say Avondale, right? It's an area of Jacksonville, right? But it doesn't know the boundaries.
Yeah, it doesn't know the boundaries.
Or what someone may call it Avondale, but it's a street over, right?
We all do that, right? It's right in Avondale, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
We all do that.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the things that it needs to teach itself. So, like I said, I think within the next 2 to 3 years, you're not going to do the manual search anymore.
Yeah,
everyone's going to be doing the AI search.
I absolutely believe that.
Yeah. All right. So we got a chance to learn. I learned a little bit about you last week at lunch. Tell everyone a little bit about, growing up. What did you envision yourself doing? And then obviously you met your spouse, which kind of probably sent you on in the military, sent you on a totally different trajectory. And then, and circle around, just kind of, I always like to, I talked about writing a book. Everyone comes from a different background.
Yes.
We've had teachers, we've had single moms, all that kind of thing, corporate America type of thing. You're on a slightly different track. You didn't spend 20 years in corporate America. You're still a very young person. So tell us a little bit of how, that early part of your career and what led the path to, getting involved in real estate, because you weren't a realtor right away.
I was not.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a real estate family. My mom was a realtor in Georgia when I was growing up. And I always swore I would never go into real estate. I watched my mom and I was like, I want no part of that. Real estate looked a lot different.
Well, hold on, I gotta ask a question there. So do you do your business similar to the way your mom did her business, or you do it differently?
It's completely different.
All right, we're gonna have to talk about that.
Yeah, we can talk about that. It's completely different. And I do think part of that, we can touch on it more, but I do think part of that is my mom was doing real estate in a very small town in Georgia. And I'm doing real estate in Jacksonville, which is very different. But I swore I never wanted to be a real estate agent. I did not want to be in real estate. I wanted nothing to do with it. I watched her and I was like, that looks awful. And so then I really, I am kind of nerdy and I really loved everything science. So I wanted to go to school to be a physician's assistant. Started my undergrad. My plan was to pre-med my undergrad and then go to physician's assistant school. Well, my husband and I met in high school, but he's a grade younger, or he was a grade younger than me. So I graduated, went to college, he graduated, and he's like, I'm going into the Navy. And I was like, well, that changes things. So
you were hoping he was going to follow you to college?
I was hoping, but it didn't work out that way. So he went into the Navy, and pretty quickly after, we're long distance, pretty quickly after that, we're like, this just isn't, long distance kind of sucks.
Yeah.
So as soon as he got his first permanent orders after all of his schooling and stuff, it was to Jacksonville. And at that point we were engaged and we were getting married, and I was finishing my undergrad. I did finish my undergrad in Georgia. And then when we moved here in 2013, luckily, that's a whole other story, but luckily I stumbled into meeting Debbie, and she helped us buy our first house. And I joke and I tell everybody that I mean, this was 2013, so pricing was different back then. But she showed me every house east of 295 and north of JTB that was under 200,000. I mean, my file is so thick. We still have it at the office just as like a memory, but it was so thick. And so we ended up finding the house, closing a couple weeks after. She's like, "Hey, I miss you. Do you want a job?" And I had just moved here. I knew no one. I'd gotten a dog because I was like, there's nobody. Like, my husband was on deployment, so I was like, I don't have anybody here. And I was like, yeah, I would love a job.
Well, you mentioned that at lunch, and it made me think. So she enjoyed, some of your small chatter, I'm sure, while you guys drove around and looked at houses.
Yeah.
Type of thing. But there had to be something that she saw in you to fill this position that she needed. There must have been some skill that you were demonstrating. Were you very organized in what homes you wanted to look at? What was it that you think?
Yeah, I'm very type A. So, I mean, I had a spreadsheet. I had my Excel spreadsheet of all the houses, what I liked about them, what I didn't like about them. Pretty quickly, I'd narrowed down what I was looking for. It's just what I was looking for in the area I was looking for. There was a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I really don't know what she saw in me. I tell people all the time that Debbie has a knack for seeing potential in people before they can see it in themselves. And she saw it in me well before I ever saw it in myself. And so even when she brought me on, I had no intention of going into sales. And I was very upfront with her about that. I was like, we'll support you on the admin side. I will plan events. I will do whatever you want me to do. I am not going into sales. And she's like, okay. And I didn't even plan to get licensed at that point.
All right, so I got to ask, what was it? Something about your mom's business set you off to have that attitude that you just expressed?
So I think a lot of it was I sat in the car so many hours when she was doing showings, and when my mom would show a house, she'd be in there forever. Like, I swear it'd be like an hour she was in every house, and I'm like, Mom, it's a 3-2. Like, it shouldn't be so long.
Exactly.
And
you can paint a room in an hour, right?
And so, I mean, I always saw her working. So my mom did new construction for a long time, and then she kind of ventured into resales as I got older. But so she worked, a lot of nights and weekends. Mm-hmm. And she was always on the phone. I remember like her always being on the phone. And I was just like, I want a job where I go to work every day. And when I'm off work, I'm off work and I can be off work. And it's funny because that's definitely not how real estate is now either. It's 100% a 24/7 always on career. Yeah. But I do think I've tried to structure it a little bit differently so that I don't have as much of that as she did. But yeah, I mean, I really think it was just like following her around to showings and all of that, but I was eventually just like, I don't want any part of this. So then I started working with Debbie, and she taught me everything that I know, really. I mean, she taught me, and luckily at the brokerage that we were at then, they had incredible training programs for new agents, and I went to all of them, even though I wasn't a new agent, because I wanted to know all of the info that an agent needed to know so that I could support her better.
Do you think your mom had what you've had in as far as the trainings and support in the small town? Yeah.
No.
And the interaction with other agents kind of to talk shop and how do they do things a little more efficiently? I think when maybe if we sometimes don't even think about it, but if you're that agent that's spending maybe you don't have a lot of business, so you can spend an hour on one particular house. Obviously, maybe you feel the buyer is going to fall in love with it, right? The longer you stay there, the longer the buyer wants to stay there. Yeah. You're thinking, oh, I must like this house, but when you start to get busy and you're running a business, you got to be efficient in that, and your time that especially someone who wants to go, hey, I want to go see 5 houses today. Well. Right. I can't spend an hour in every house. It's just going to wear you down. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the way that I always describe it to people to kind of put it into perspective is when my mom was selling real estate and where she was selling real estate. And like I said, it's a small town in Georgia. Mm-hmm. $1 Million Club was an annual award. You were trying to sell $1 million in real estate in a year.
Yeah.
We're selling
There's a lot of sub $100,000 homes.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're selling multi-million dollars of real estate a month.
Right.
So it's just a different level of real estate. We have to operate differently. We have to be more efficient. Mm. And there was never, my mom's her business was very relationship based. I mean, it was a lot of people that she knew, but because of that, they're friends, right? And so it's like, everything is like, oh, I'm just hanging out with a friend.
Well, they probably spend half the time gossiping, right?
Right. And we're pretty much all of my clients become friends by the time we're done. One of the things that I do up front is I have kind of like an expectations meeting, buyer consult, listing consult, whatever you want to call it. But I set expectations kind of up front of what they can expect, because I feel like if they know, okay, every Wednesday I'm going to get a report from Tiffany that says this is how my listing is performing. I'm not getting the 5:00 on Friday phone call of like, hey, what's going on this week? Because they know they just got the report on Wednesday and they're going to get it next Wednesday. And so I think setting those expectations, it's just the way that you run the business. Like my mom's was it was like a mom and pop little real estate business.
I mean, it's in many things in life that we do. We wing it.
Yeah.
And if you're not around others in the trade to talk shop of how they handled the situation or things they're doing to be more efficient, you just keep doing it the way you've always done it.
Yeah.
And because you don't know any better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and my mom did it because she loves it, right? Like she loves going to see houses. Like she's a people person. She loves talking to people. So for her, spending an hour in a house in each house with everybody was totally fine. But I don't think that there was ever the desire to grow it into something as large as what we have here in Jacksonville. So,
well, she was making a living.
Yeah, she's making a living and she's having fun doing it, right? And she just had it structured very differently. And it really wasn't until I joined Debbie's team that I knew that real estate could be ran so differently. I mean, in like my mom's real estate business, I mean, they were still doing like cell phone pictures for listings, right? Like, there were no, like in our small town, there wasn't a real estate photographer that could come take pictures of your listings. So it was just like, it was
cell phones on, the initial, not with the technology
like the
today.
Flip phone, like the Nextel, that's what it was. Everybody had the Nextels that were like chirping each other. But they were flip phones or Blackberries.
Right.
But it wasn't until I joined Debbie's team that I was like, oh wow, like this is real estate at a completely different level. This is not what I know of real estate. So kind of had to ditch everything that I thought that I knew about real estate and relearn everything Debbie's way, which was incredible and very eye-opening. Like I said, I mean, it was a business. It was. So
what happens then that you start actually going, well, maybe I can get into sales?
Yeah. So I got licensed in 2016. Also had my daughter in 2016. So had a new baby. My husband was going on deployment again. And I was like, I think I do want to get into sales, but the timing just wasn't right at that moment. But I did go ahead and I got licensed because that gave me a lot of ability to support her in licensed assistant activity.
Yeah.
Like I could start writing contracts. I could start doing those things, which I think ultimately helped me significantly as my career progressed to have that time to really just focus on, okay, how do we write a great offer? How do we write a great listing agreement? And then I think that like my husband came home, we got new orders. And it's like, okay, so now we're moving. And Debbie, I went to work and told Debbie that we were moving, and we just had this like conversation of, I was like, I don't want to leave Jacksonville real estate. And I told her about my idea for Beacon and kind of launching this transaction coordination company that would support agents across different brokerages, and that would allow me to stay tapped into Jacksonville real estate while I was not here.
Right.
And she was like, I will support you however I can in that. Let's do it. And so I never hesitated, was just like, let's go. I support you. I see the vision and let's go. So we started working on that. That was 2018. And that turned out like that was an incredible experience. And I think that, so between working with Debbie and then Beacon, but by the time I went into sales, I'd been a part of right at just over 2,000 transactions. So I was going
from the time working with Debbie and then working with other agents in a combination, you had been in part of a couple thousand transactions. Wow.
So that is a game changer.
Yeah.
I feel like I got to enter sales when we came back. So I entered sales when we came back in 2022.
So that says something right there. Cause I mean, if you haven't been in the business long, someone who does 50 transactions is a big producer.
Right.
And the fact that you personally were involved in helping him transact nearly 2,000, you were working with a good array of agents.
Yeah, we had quite a few agents. I mean, at one point we had 4 other TCs working with me.
Wow.
So we were doing a lot, but I feel like when I went into sales in 2022, I just came in with such a head start that I wish every new agent could have, because I had seen so much, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel pretty confident navigating really any situation you can throw at me, because I've seen it before.
I want to ask you this because the listeners, I think, can pick up on this because I talk about it all the time. There's a lot of agents out there that have reached I call it the lid. Mm-hmm. Okay. They're doing everything themselves, but at some point they max themselves out. And they really aren't growing. If they're growing, it's very little because they're not spending time, nurturing the past clients and starting to snowball that referral business or repeat business. They're just focused on, hey, they're getting referrals, but it's just staying right there. They're just hitting that lid, and I think it's under 10 million, depending on what level. But I think the average in Northeast Florida, if you're somewhere between 6 and 9 million, you're probably feeling this. Yeah. And you've done it where imagine was pay for play transaction. You get so much for a transaction, whatever that is. And there's a couple good services in town. Yep. I've had Samantha on. She's running she has great experience there with the Op Suite. You were on the helping side. You were supporting these agents. Did you see them start to blossom? They called you because like, oh my God, I'm so busy. I can't do anymore. And then you take this load off of them and then just see them catapult.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was the most fulfilling part of Beacon, right? So like when we started Beacon, I guess the tricky part is that I'd already identified that I really wanted to go into sales, right? And it just, the timing didn't work out. And that was you can't go into sales if you don't live here. That's kind of difficult to do. But it was my way to stay in Jacksonville real estate. Mm-hmm. So, but I knew it wasn't like my long-term goal. But what was the most fulfilling part of it is getting to watch other agents blossom because they had our support, and getting those like late night text messages of like, hey, we got it done. We couldn't have done it without you. Like those were the things that it was like it is worth it, you know? And I would tell any agent,
you don't get that from a normal job all the time.
You do not.
Because you're not, unless you're, in sales, you do, if the sale is, whether it's a 1-day sale or 1 hour sale, or, you get those immediate feedback transactions, like, people say, thank you for helping us out. Thank you, whatever. But the large purchase that they're making, and in fact, we're spending 30, 45 days on average with them, if not longer, if you take longer to actually look for the homes. Right now, some people are really taking some time.
Yeah, they have the ability to.
Yeah, and so forth. And to get that feedback, that's kind of like our high, right?
Oh, no, it's absolutely. I tell people all the time, real estate is the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, right?
Yes.
But that is definitely our high. And I think that we can't take for granted the fact that I know for us, we're doing these all day, every day, right? We're cranking them out. For our clients, they're not. They're doing this a handful of times in their lives.
Right.
And this is an extremely emotional, vulnerable time in their lives for no matter what the circumstances are. I mean, we're with them through divorces. We're with them through deaths. We're with them through births. We're with them through everything. And what an honor to get to be along the ride with people while they're going through those changes, right? I mean, the fact that they're trusting us to help them through this time in their lives is like kind of mind-blowing when you really sit and think about it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's such an honor. And so when you get those when I would get those texts and they're like, hey, couldn't have done it without you, thank you, it's like, oh yeah, that was worth it. Like, and I mean, even now, as I get, like when I get them from clients, it's like, oh man. But then I make sure I turn around and I text my TC and I'm like, hey,
you got to share the
because that is one thing I will say. If you are an agent that feels like you are just tapped, you need a TC. And if you have a TC and you still feel tapped, you need a different TC, because
would you agree that some agents, and I'm sure you've seen this, some agents, the TC, because a transaction is a transaction, right? And the things the transaction coordinator is doing is, there's a lot of steps, depending on the transaction, may take longer than others, but there's a series of steps that you're doing to get them to closing. Then there's some other stuff depending on the marketing strategy of that particular agent, for example, marketing being another part. Maybe you can add to this if you think of something else. But the marketing is nothing. You've got a marketing plan and you want to nurture those past clients, and it's very intense, not intense from what you're putting out, but intense from the standpoint that you are really working it. You are contacting them so many times, you're having client events, whatever it is. That's a whole nother ball. And that changes with the real estate agents because some are more serious about it and more, into it than others. What would you recommend if you're talking to an agent? What's your experience? We know TC, you've been a TC, you've run TCs, you see that benefit, but now you've been in the real estate business for, number of years, you're doing your own business. What are some of the other things they should be looking to outsource?
Yeah, so we do outsource marketing, a good bit of marketing. We have a marketing consultant that's amazing, and we outsource a lot to her. However, I mean, Evie does a lot for us as well, so that helps there. I do think that there's a point for agents where you've outgrown your TC and you're kind of starting to look for more of an assistant. You do get to a point where...
Does an assistant replace a TC?
Not always. I think it depends on the assistant. So I did both for Debbie in the beginning, and it worked for us. I don't think it works for everybody. I actually think there's a pretty limited number of assistants that can replace a TC. The reason I say that is, in my mind, a TC is a specialist, right? They get that contract.
They got that spreadsheet, timeline.
They've got it down, and they have it nailed down.
Yeah.
And they're in transactions all day, every day, and that mindset of being in transactions is a little bit different than the mindset of being an assistant, and that, like, setting appointments and, you know, coordinating calendars and working on events. And I think the shift between the two of those things can be difficult. And my other thing that I've always kind of emphasized to people is, when we're doing a client event, if we have an assistant working on a client event, I don't want that to take away from our transactions, right? Yeah. And so when a couple of times a year when we have these client events that take a lot of energy, I don't want our transactions falling to the wayside because that assistant is tied up working on this event. So that's where I think, I mean, a pay per close TC is a great model because that is somebody that is just completely in transactions 24/7.
How many transactions can a decent transaction coordinator handle? Whether it's they're working with a team and that they're getting everybody different team, or one that's working, you know, obviously with realtors across the board from different brokerages. But how many can they expect to have on their plate at any one time?
So it's going to depend on their systems.
And be full.
Yeah, it's going to depend on their systems. If you're just using, you know, a spreadsheet to track or something like that, probably 20 to 25. If you have a transaction coordination system, we use Open to Close. I'm a big fan of Open to Close. I think they're exceptional. I mean, you can do 50 pretty easily, 75 a month. Because
it's giving you a pipeline report every day and letting you know where every transaction, like, oh, you haven't done anything with this one, and the appraisal was ordered whatever amount of days ago. Yeah. So the thing about Open to Close is you log on, you have like all of your transactions get entered there. Obviously, you log on every day. This is your task list, and it has a task list and it color coordinates all your different transactions, and it's beautiful. But it has your task list. And so you can just start going through and checking off tasks. But it also saves all of your email templates. So you're sending emails from inside of that software. You're not really shuffling between, it has all of your docs in there. So you're doing compliance inside of that. So you're not really having to shuffle between different softwares and systems the way that you do when you're in like a spreadsheet, right? Like you're in a spreadsheet, you see that there's you need to check on the appraisal for a file, but then you got to go to your email and send that email. And then you're going back to your spreadsheet and you're telling your spreadsheet that, hey, I sent this email. I need to make sure I get a follow-up on that email. Open to Close is doing all of that for you. So you're sending the email from inside the system, and then it's going to say, okay, in 24 hours, I'm going to pop this back up on your screen so you can make sure that you got an answer on that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I experienced that. I know, my first 12 years of my career, I was at Quicken Loans. High volume. Doing a high volume of loan, and we would get a transaction report every morning. We would get the link because it's pretty big, but it would have all your transactions and where they were at in their process. Because you could easily have 10, 15 transactions going on for any one loan officer, because it wasn't a big deal, especially when things are going in a refi boom, to have, to do 30, 40 transactions in a month. So you got to know where that status is at. Where's the appraisal at? Why is this? It's already been, the processor's already sent to underwriting. Why has it been, so many days? I apologize with that. Okay. I'm going to turn that off. Where it's at all the time. And so what makes me think, when you were explaining that software, if in agents, and here I hear this complaint, oh, somebody told me they use such and such transaction coordinator and had a bad experience. And so they get nervous. They think all transaction coordinators obviously are in this boat, right? They get a little shut up because they don't want to interview people. Yeah. I mean, you don't have time to do that as an agent. Right. But if you hire someone like OpSuite at Sam, and there's others, they're doing that interviewing already. Because this is the business, like the business you were running. You were doing it. You were interviewing people and their quality and sifting them out for the agents to bring in the best. Right. And I'm a big fan of Sam and OpSuite. And that was the other thing I was going to say is like OpSuite does offer other
programs as well. I mean, they do offer marketing pieces and things like that as well. So that can be a great option for agents as well that need more support than just TC support.
Yeah. Yeah. But if someone's out there interviewing, they might be going and talking to Sam at OpSuite or the other services that are out there, or maybe just an individual transaction coordinators. For the agents that are listening, what are some of the things that they need to have their radar up and be either asking or listening when they're actually talking to some of these
Are they
services?
using a transaction management software? It would be my biggest one. If they're tracking on a spreadsheet, I would just be weary of that. I just think,
Especially the age of AI, like we were talking earlier, right? It's like time to move on.
and we're all human, right? Like we're just more likely to make mistakes when we don't have a software that's doing it for us.
Right.
So I would ask if they have a transaction management software. Second, that's a big one. Vacation coverage. Who are they using for vacation coverage? What do they do about vacation coverage? How are you going to be alerted to vacation coverage? Because your TC is going to go on vacation. They can't work all the time. And also, I mean, operating hours. Do they work business hours? Do they work weekends? Those are important to know. There's some TCs that only work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and they can get their job done in that time. That's the one thing I'll say to agents is it's worth noting that your TCs are coordinating a lot with lenders and title, and lenders and title are open 9 to 5, Monday to Friday for the most part. I mean, I know there's some exceptions.
Well, the title people are.
Yeah, right. But we're making most of our progress in files during that time, right? Like that's when files are getting sent to underwriting. That's when we're getting responses from people.
Right.
Your TC can get their job done in 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, but you just need to know that so that you have those expectations set. If you're somebody that if you want a response on a weekend, make sure you're picking a TC company that can support that. And then I would also just say to make sure that you talk to the TC that you're going to be working with, because this is it's a very personal business, and I think personalities matter.
That actually spins me into that, and I'm sorry spending so much time on it, but you have an expertise in this area because you've worked both sides, and the advice is huge for anyone listening. You just said, the personalities, which leads into how they want their business to flow. Right. And I think it was Carrie Carpenter that I had on a year ago or so, and she talked about how she loves a long text message. Mm-hmm. Now, not everybody likes a long text message, but she enjoys those long text messages from her transaction coordinator first thing in the morning saying, hey, this is where this is at, this, to giving her basically that pipeline report. Mm-hmm. This is where everything's at kind of thing. So she knows leading into the day, and then obviously if she needs to act on anything, right? Not everybody likes that. Everyone's communicated different, which I think is the cause why some people say the transaction coordinator didn't work, is because they didn't sit down and actually work out how they want to communicate, because just like every realtor runs their business differently, they want to communicate and handle that transaction coordinator differently.
It's a personal business. And your personalities have to mesh, and they're not always going to mesh. Like for me, I don't love a long text message, but I do love that every Friday at noon, I get a file report on every file that I have with my TC that sends me a status update on absolutely everything of where we're at and any notes that I need to be aware of. And I get that every Friday, and I love it because then I go into the weekend and I'm doing open houses, doing showings, doing whatever, but I'm not worrying about the files that I have that are under contract, because I know as of Friday at noon, everything was where it needed to be. And I also love that I get them at Friday at noon, because if there's anything that needs attention, I have, a few more hours to get it handled before everybody's checking out for the weekend. Right. So but that's something that me and my TC discussed, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to talk to your TC and see if your personalities mesh. And they might not. And it's better to find that out before you get started than when you're, 10 transactions deep and you're like, this is the worst experience I've ever had. Because
the transaction coordinator does need to mold to the real estate agent. They are the source. The agent will, I'm sure, tweak a little bit, but the agent by this time in their business, when they reach a point where they need a transaction coordinator, is probably starting, I wouldn't say set in their ways, but has some sort of rhythm to their business. Mm-hmm. And so the transaction coordinator needs an insert, and that rhythm is different to every person.
It's different for everybody, but you've also got to know that your TC can't read your mind, right?
Yeah,
they're only as good as what you tell them. So if there's a specific email that you want sent out on every transaction at a certain point in the transaction, you need to send that email to the TC, or they're not going to know to send it. They can't read your mind. So I would just say communication is huge, especially those first few transactions. I used to tell everybody it takes 3 transactions. After we do 3 transactions together, we'll be in a groove. But those first 3, if you see anything you don't like or anything you really like, tell me. Because if there's anything you don't like, we'll fix it. If there's anything you really like, we can try to do more of it. But it's got to be that 2-way communication. And it works the same way for us, because one of the biggest, or when I was with Beacon, it worked the same way for us, because one of the biggest things is that TCs are really set in their ways. So they'll be agents are really set in their ways. So they'll be working and they're not copying the TC. Well, we're only as good as the information that we know, right?
Right.
So if we don't know that you've already figured out a repair agreement, we're going to keep harassing you about the repair agreement because we don't know that you've worked it out.
Right.
And
you CC your and any communication with your customer, just CC your
everything.
so they know the conversation's going on, and Yeah.
Yep. And then if I get a text from a customer that she's not copied on, I'll screenshot it and send it to her if it's something that she needs to know.
Right.
I mean, obviously, if it's just like, our general like chitter chatter, I don't send her that. But if it's something that
FYI.
Right.
Yeah.
FYI, just got this.
Yeah.
And then I always if I text her, I always send the property address too. Because I do think it's important to know that most of the time your TCs have a lot more files going than you have going. So if you just send them a random text message and it, has a phone number at the top and it doesn't have the contact saved, they're like, I don't know who this belongs to.
Yeah, yeah.
So I always just try to send the property address.
I want to get on to your real estate business and your success there, but I want to finish this portion because I think this is so vital.
Yeah.
You're unique in the fact that you've come from that, and you can look back and you can and you run it. You weren't just a transaction coordinator; you actually ran a group of transaction coordinators and all this experience. So that's why I want to stick on. But now that you're on the agent side, and you're looking at, obviously you use a transaction coordinator today. So there's agents out there right now that are procrastinating over this. Just really summarize some of the load and some of the things you're able to do as an agent because you're pushing this off and entrusting. There's transaction coordinators, some of them are licensed, right? I mean, obviously they probably get paid a little bit more if they are licensed, right? That can fill in the contract and then send it to you for the review. Just doing those things while you're still, driving from here to here or going to another listing appointment, they're handling that. So when you come out of that listing appointment, the contract's already done. You're not going, I got to go home and do this listing, do this, offer, it's already done. And you're just reviewing it. Oh, when you got a little correction, okay, now it's ready to send, boom. But how that's just opens your abilities to do just that much more.
Right. So, everybody has 24 hours in a day, right? And we all have a capacity level that we can handle. And when you're at that capacity level, you've got to shift something off. And if you don't have a TC, then that's where you can start shifting off. You could get a TC and start shifting off. Not only
and they can do it just as, I would say just as good as you are, but
if
you're not the only
one. They can do it better than you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a big. Debbie taught me this, and I'm a big. Surround yourself with people that are better than you. Mm-hmm. If you are outsourcing anything, you should be outsourcing it to someone who's better than you at that particular thing, right? You're not going to hire a marketing person that's worse at marketing than you. So you shouldn't hire a TC that's worse at doing TC tasks than you are.
Right.
But the fact is, a lot of agents are really terrible at doing TC tasks. As far as staying on top of it, sending emails when they should be sent, because we're busy. And everybody, a lot of agents have families at home too. So for me, it's there's two agents that it really appeals to, right? There's the agents that are really high producing that are just tapped, but they don't want or have the time to bring on an assistant to hire to offload assistant tasks. So they go straight to a TC that already knows how to TC so that it's a relatively smooth transition. And then there's the people that want time because they have families and they're figuring out that they're working all day. They're going to that showing appointment at 5:00 and then they get home and they're like, crap, I still have to write this contract. And that's time they could be with their family.
Right.
And so it really appeals to two.
Or just decompress.
Yeah. Or just watch a TV show or something.
Yeah, right.
Or maybe even eat dinner. But,
right.
So it definitely appeals to kind of two different groups of people. But regardless, I think it's definitely one of the easiest things that you can offload in your business to free up some capacity.
And to those that are out there listening that are going, this might be me. You may be doing really good business right now and people they're giving you good reviews. But what if you actually put that on steroids? What would that look like? Can you actually push the needle? Are you getting an 8 out of 10? I don't know anyone who gets 10 out of 10, but can that transaction coordinator actually make the transaction even better for your consumer, your buyer or seller, whatever you got there, but then all of a sudden relieve you to go maybe spend some more time on follow-up on those past clients. It's that the saying is, does a tree in the woods make noise and no one's there to hear it?
Right.
You don't know what is your rating as a real estate agent. You are getting great reviews, people, because you're asking for it, and you're putting your passion into it. I think there's a lot of agents in that area. And they're like, oh man, if I bring on a transaction coordinator, will that dull that down? No, you've probably experienced where it's actually moved the needle higher.
Yeah, and then wait till you start getting reviews that are calling out your transaction coordinator by name. That was like, it was such a great experience, and I loved working with your TC as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's when you're like, oh, wow, like that was part of the experience that they really enjoyed. And that's when you realize, like, okay, that this is elevating my business. It's not just making it easier for me. It's really elevating things. And I mean, the biggest pushback is, you're spending, I mean, it depends on the TC, right? But $300 to $500 a transaction on a TC. And agents are like, well, I don't want to give up $300 to $500 on a transaction. Okay, well, what if giving up the $300 to $500 on that transaction meant you could do one more transaction a month?
Yeah.
Would it be worth it then? Because the commission on that one extra transaction every month is going to more than pay for that TC.
Yeah.
And
well, let alone what we just talked about, just, to be able to go home, they've already done the offer contract. You review it, boom, and then you go to have dinner.
Yeah.
And you can, go do what you want to do, or go to your kid's ball game without sitting there stressing, because they've already done the contract. You can come home from the ball game, review the contract, say, yep, that's good, let's send it out. You're not going, I got to rush home because I got to do this contract, and you're up till 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night or later, and that sort of thing. It's just a total peace of mind. So eventually you come back to Jacksonville.
Yeah. So we came back to Jacksonville in 2022. Knew immediately that my plan was to transition into sales. So as soon as we found out we were coming back, Debbie and I started making that transition plan and what that was going to look like, because we were working with so many agents and we had so much access to data. I did not want to enter sales while I was still active in the transaction coordination business.
Did you just give that up?
So I helped each of our TCs start their own business.
Oh, okay.
Our program So one thing, I love open to close, but one thing is it is a very manual build out. At least it was at the time that we started it with using it, but gave that to each of them and helped them kind of each set up their own business, which I think was a good transition. And it's awesome to see now, because they still help each other. Like, they do vacation coverage for each other, even though they're in different, like, they have their own businesses, they do vacation coverage for each other. So like, it's really cool to see. And they were all very supportive. They were all great, but knew that I wanted to transition. So that meant closing Beacon, and was a tough decision, because that was like my little baby that was growing up, but felt like it was the right move. And also at that same time, Debbie's husband got diagnosed with cancer. So she was needing a lot more hands-on support in her business. And it was just her at that point, and Beacon supporting her in transactions. So there was just kind of like all the stars kind of aligned that was like, it's go time.
Yeah.
And my husband was on deployment, but it was like, we can't keep waiting for him to not be on deployment. He's always on deployment at this point.
Right.
So I started planning for that transition, made that transition into sales, and thankfully it was a smooth transition, I think mostly because of all the experience that I'd had in transactions before then.
All right, so you come in, Debbie needs you to, she's got clients calling all the time, because she's been in the business 20 whatever years. Mm-hmm. So you have stuff to do.
Yeah.
You're not starting from scratch. So you're fortunate from that standpoint. What are some of the things, and even working under Debbie, though, I imagine there's some things that you do it Tiffany's way.
Yeah. So that is one thing that, like, we had that conversation when I first came on. We mesh very well, but in a lot of ways we're very opposite, right? Mm-hmm. I love AI. Debbie does not love AI. We joke because she is that, like, solid wisdom, right? She's been doing this for so long. And I'm the one that pushes her out of her comfort zone a little bit. I'm like, we should try this. It's something new. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, when I'm like kind of getting overwhelmed, she's like, okay, let's break it down back to the basics and see where we're at. And so we balanced each other out really well there. But yeah, so her husband was really sick. I mean, he had stage 4 cancer. Mm-hmm. And so I had to jump right in. And I mean, Debbie will tell you, for pretty much 2 years, I got here and he was sick. He was in Mayo. And pretty much the first 2 years until last year that I was here, it was me jumping in and running her business. Yep. And then I was also
trying to get your business going.
And also growing my business at the same time. Right. But I do think, I mean, obviously having that leg to stand on, of being able to support her in her business was wonderful.
All right. So I think, one of the, I'm not really going to get into brokerages because you followed Debbie. Debbie was more or less your brokerage. A lot of times I always say on the show, the choice of brokerage can make or break a new real estate agent. I mean, fresh green.
Right. And
yeah.
I do. So our previous brokerage that we were at was excellent for new agents. And I think that new agent, like I said, I went to all of the new agent education because I wanted to know all of it.
Right.
And it was perfect for where I was at. And then Debbie and I had this conversation when she was moving over to Evie. We hit a point at that brokerage where it felt like we were kind of tapped on agent education, right? Like you're at this point where it's like, okay, you're paying a lot of money to be here, but we feel kind of tapped on what we're actually like receiving from that.
The value.
Yeah.
That's what.
So she moved over to Evie, and then I moved over a little bit after her. And there's no other place we'd be. We'll be there.
Yeah. But the mentorship that you got, because now you're coming over, she's kind of taken away, but your listing appointments, were you guys doing, I can't remember if I'm sure I asked Debbie this, but were you guys doing buyer consultations as you're required to do now?
Yes. So we were doing them before too.
You were doing it before. So, but having that mentor of working with Debbie, did you feel when you came back, you were ready for that, or you still went together on some of these appointments to work through, get some at-bats of you actually being the presenter?
I felt ready. I mean, we definitely would, like, we still, even now, will tag team some just because we like to go together. But I definitely felt ready. I mean, I felt well prepared at that point, but it was a completely different side of sales, right? I was used to sales at Beacon, but I was selling agents on TC services.
Right.
So it was a completely different side of sales. I'd never done a listing presentation before. I had prepped a gajillion of them for Debbie, but I had never actually done one.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit different.
Well, I imagine with your back office experience in having done so many transactions and seen so many, because I mean, if there's not an issue with a transaction, I don't, it's like, does it exist, right?
Exactly.
There's always something. I mean, it might be just a minor negotiation over repair or something, but there's always something that the bump in the road, how big it is different on every transaction. But you had seen all this.
Yeah.
So when you sit down right now and you have a conversation, as we were talking kind of pre-show about like new construction catastrophes and things like that, and doing inspection reports and stuff like that, you had a lot of experience just as a new realtor, but you had enough experience to really kind of tell some of these stories to these customers in front of you.
I think what is different, right, so when you have normal new agents are focusing on their listing presentation and their buyer's presentation because they're trying to get clients. And then they get those clients and they're like, okay, now what do? I was the opposite. I knew what to do once we had the clients, but it was like, okay, we got to go back and learn how to do listing presentations and buyer's presentations. And like, I knew how to prep them, but I've never given one.
Right.
So I was a little bit opposite there. And, I came into sales with a broker's license because I got licensed in 2016 and I got my brokers in 2021. I think it might have been 2022. So I came into sales with a broker's license. Like, I did things very out of order, right? Like it did not follow the traditional path, but that initial transition was actually pretty smooth. And I do think a lot of that is because I was confident once we had clients. I was like, okay, once I've got somebody, I'm good. I can get them to closing.
Right.
We can do that all, and no matter what bump we hit from here to closing, we've got this. We've just got to master getting the client, which thankfully, because I had previous sales experience, was not as rough of a transition.
Well, did you find yourself being, I don't know, people don't know to ask what questions, but situations that have come up. And when you start talking to them in the presentation about your experience, like, hey, based on what you're looking at, might have, we need to look for this, we need to look for that. You're going new construction, you should have an inspector with you.
Definitely need an inspector.
Yeah, because you've had, and you can speak through experience and confidence, and that bleeds through on your presentation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I never had to have that experience that a lot of new agents have of going into a listing appointment or going into a buyer's consult just completely green, right? Like, I went in and I had stories I could tell, and I had experience I could lean on. So that's where I think having like any new agent that has the opportunity to work as an assistant or a TC or anything for a period of time, I would jump on that opportunity. And I know that it feels like it's not a lot of money, But I mean, do it for 6 months, right? Just get the experience there, because having those experiences to lean on when you're going into those appointments gives you all the confidence in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can dive in, like, obviously, like a lot of people do, but a young person that might be listening to this, who's going over here to UNF to take, real estate, degree that they have over there, becoming a transaction coordinator, while they're in school, taking that and so forth is a huge experience. Because would you agree? A lot of times, I would imagine some agents let the transaction coordinator solve the problem.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I would say, I mean, it was amazing to me in the beginning how much other agents will lean on their TCs to solve problems.
Especially an experienced one. I know there's some new agents that were fortunate enough and they got a TC right away. They were willing to, give that few $100, per transaction because they knew. But yeah, if you're a new agent and you don't have a lot of experience, and maybe you're on one of these cloud brokerages, so you're not surrounded by people walking in an office, like you may at one of the fancy Engel Völkers offices there, where you have all these smart people around. You hire a smart TC. Can carry you through, because there's people. The other thing is like, as you started, you saw yourself as just being a transaction coordinator. You didn't think about going into sales. There's people that that's what they enjoy doing. They enjoy, whether they're working at home or in a cube, and they like being that project coordinator. Yeah, there are career TCs that it's a personality type, right? They love that. Yeah, and they have absolutely no desire to go into sales at all. I gotta ask, when you were hiring TCs in your business, did you give them one of the personality tests? Yeah, we did disc profiles on everybody to see if they were the type that actually liked working in that cube. Yeah. We did disc profiles on everybody. If you're a high D, typically, you're not going to be a good TC, just because you got to have that compassion and the patience. Those high Ds typically don't have it. Yeah. But also, I mean, for the personality testing, like letting your TCs know. Because then after they learn a little bit about it, they're kind of like placing their agents too, right? Like they're like, that's a high D. Like that they're high strung. And this is how I need to treat them, communicate with them, how often. Absolutely. Yeah. But then we had, back to the new agents, we did have so many new agents at Beacon that would call us, they hit a hiccup and they're like, well, what do we do now? Yeah. Because they don't know. And it was great to be able to support them through that. But also as a new agent, if you're jumping right in, I would consider a TC if you're able to, because if you can get a good TC that's been doing this for a while, they're a wealth of knowledge. The average TC sees so many more transactions than the average agent. They just see more issues come up, and they just have more experience navigating those issues. And I think a challenge that you're always juggling as an agent is quality support, like from whether it's a plumber or obviously a lender or all the other ancillary supports that make the transaction happen around the agent and the transaction coordinator. That experienced transaction coordinator is working with all these other agents that they know Joe is going to show up and get that done. Right. Let me call him and we'll get it done. Yeah. Yeah. That was coming into sales. That was, I think, another huge benefit that I had, is that I've worked with every title company in town, and I've worked with a ton of contractors in town. And so I knew, like, okay, steer clear of this title company, steer clear of this contractor. Oh, I really like this title company, or I really like this lender. And I knew that going in because I'd had experience working with them, where new agents are just having to feel that out or go with, whoever is recommended to them by others in their brokerage. I've been to a mortgage conference where they actually said, you ought to, become good friends with the title company, because you can be a resource when that other loan officer screws up the deal. Yeah. And it's not necessarily screw up the deal too, not to be negative. There are loan officers that will screw up. There's one going on right now that this company should not even have gotten this loan, and they're supposed to close today. And they're, I know someone significant who is on part of this transaction. They say, oh, we're not closing today. It's going to be a while longer. It's like, well, when I told me who the lender was, I was like, no, you should not be doing that DSCR loan with them, because one, they're a cluster to begin with. Now, just doing a standard FHA loan, or they could do those all day long. But no, you need people who specialize. But the deals that fall out. But what I'm finding now, and I don't know if you've experienced this, I had recently, and where condos, there's a lot of lenders who don't really want to do condos right now. It's
Absolutely.
many condos in Florida because we're here in Florida, so I assume it's condos in Florida,
Yeah.
where others are starting to specialize in it.
Yes.
So, depending on the situation, you need to get, know those people who actually are getting those deals closed.
Yeah. No,
And
absolutely.
the transaction coordinator and the title companies are people that know those.
Yeah, they know those people. And I mean, condos are definitely tricky right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, that kind of goes back to what we talked about at lunch last week of those lenders that are starting to specialize in condos, they're finding opportunity in this chaos, right? They're finding opportunity in this market. And there's always a way to find opportunity, but then knowing those specialists that, okay, I have this situation and I know that this person's great at this.
Yeah.
Like, that's huge.
Yeah.
And it all relates back to your client experience, right? Because if you're able to tell your client with 100% certainty, like, this is your person, that changes the experience rather than dragging them through what you just described, where, I mean, they're supposed to close and it's going to be a while longer. And what does that even mean?
All right. So I'm gonna throw one out here at you because you do have a vast more experience than the average agent. Because again, 2,000 transactions. There's not many agents that do 2,000 transactions in their 30-year career.
Right.
Okay. So you having been a piece of that, and me knowing that because I came from a call center for 12 years, based on volume. So the amount of credit reports I've seen is far more than my non-call center co-parts out there in that just get a few loans a month.
Right.
So we've seen deals get done. We've seen who to call when we need to solve a problem, whether it's a repairman or whatever. You've worked through that. Or an insurance company. That's another thing right now.
Another one, yeah.
You got to have your insurance connection. We were talking yesterday about, what if the roof and the seller doesn't have the money for the roof, but they would obviously after the house closes, and escrowing the money to get the roof
got a
done.
roofer that'll let you pay at closing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you need most lenders should be able to do it, but to escrow it. But again, having that contact for the roofer, and obviously these agents had that question about it, which I guarantee if they're asking it, that means probably 70-80% of the agents out there have the same question because it doesn't come up all the time. But these are things you got to find an insurance company that's actually going to write the policy so the loan can close, and then put the new roof on, and a few days later,
30 days,
yeah, whatever, and get that done. So you need these people. Mm-hmm. So when you come down to, you're now on the Realtor side, and I'm asking this question because I think one of the biggest failures agents have and run into issues with a lender or other vendors is because they're into choose this handful of people. And they think they're relieving themselves of some sort of obligation or some sort of, not kickback in a way that if something bad happened, it would look bad on them.
Right.
It's going to look bad on them no matter who it is. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
No, it absolutely would. I mean, I have a pretty vast network of different contractors, vendors, that I'll use. But each of them have a specialty, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this is who I call, if I've got a fogged window, this is who I'm going to call.
Right.
If I've got
your number one guy, you have a second guy if the other number one guy's in Europe,
If he's busy, I got a backup.
Yeah.
But I think, and it goes back to pick specialists.
Right.
Pick people that are specialists. Pick people that are doing this full time. That are, and not just lenders that are doing this full time. Pick title companies that are doing this pick people that are doing this full time that do this all day in and day out. Because those are the people that are going to be able to help you really solve problems when the problems come up.
Yeah.
And the problems are going to come up.
Yeah. Well, it goes back, and this is the point I want to get across, and I think you'll agree with me in getting to know you here in this last hour. If you have that go-to person, that window guy, or whatever service it is, it doesn't matter what service, but they know that they are your go-to guy. They are going to take care of you and take care of your customer with white gloves.
Yes.
You need them on a lickety split, hey, man, I got to get this done by tomorrow. This is going to close, and I can't get clear to close unless we get this done. They're going to get up early and go do it for you because you are trying to send anytime the business their way. And I think where the agents, if you think about business in general, you have your go-to contractor. If you're a builder, this is the guy I'm going to use to do my drywall.
Right.
And they do their best because they know you're looking out after them. They're going to scratch yours. Right. And it doesn't matter. All these you've got to create that relationship because it will come back to you in, whether it's financially or just in the, hey, attaboy, on your review. But if you really want to accelerate your business, you've got to create relationships. And I think too many agents sit back and wait for the vendor to create the relationship when it's really the agent. Because as of me, I'm going to say on my side, to get the elephant out of the room, or the type of thing, it's like, hey, do you want to date me? It's like kind of that thing. And it's the agent that actually is in charge.
Yeah.
Male or female, it has nothing to do with this, but you're the agent. Yeah. You're in charge. You call the shots.
Yeah. And real estate it's just a relationship business, right? The whole business is relationship based. I mean, with vendor contacts, like client it's all relationship based. So you've got to learn to nurture some relationships. You're not going to get very far in this business. Yep. And
just to read which said you're not only nurturing with your customers, you're nurturing with the people that do the things that you need to get done. Sometimes like right now.
Right. Like I'm not close. Like if
do a good job.
If I've got a buyer that needs a VA loan, we're not closing without a lender, and we're not closing without a title company. I'm physically not capable of doing those two tasks. Right. Yeah. Like I'm not a lender and I'm not a title company.
Yeah.
So it's not a one-man show here. Do I think that I do absolutely agree with you that it's on the agent to establish these relationships and nurture those relationships. But also agents kind of need to humble themselves a little and be like, okay, this is not a one-man show, even though like sometimes it feels like it is.
Yeah.
You've got to nurture those relationships, because the fact is like your lender's working with a lot of other agents. You're working, I mean, probably like you might have a couple of lenders for different situations, right? Like you might have a DSCR lender or a condo lender, but like you're working primarily with a few lenders for different situations, and you need them to be there for you when you need them.
Yeah.
So you got to nurture those relationships. Otherwise, I mean, like at least for me, I always want I want my customers, like my clients, to have A+ service, right? So I want those relationships nurtured. So like you said, when I pick up the phone and call and I'm like, hey, I have this person that's got this going on. Can you help? Yep, I'm going to drop what I'm doing and I'll do it right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's many times people call me about situations and I'm like, I don't know, but I know others. Let me get on the phone, and I start making phone calls for them. Yep. Take it off their. Hey, we need someone. This is a unique property. It's not a conforming loan. We need something totally out of the box, which I don't even offer. So I need to call someone and you need to have those people, on your team.
Yeah, you got to have those people on your team, and you've got to nurture those relationships and just know that you can't do it without them, right? Like the deal's not going to close without them. So you've got to have just great communication. And I tell people, like, I have 2 communications degrees, so there's a lot of communication over here. But communication is really key. Like, when you're establishing those relationships with a lender, like, I mean, obviously we get reached out to by a ton of lenders and a ton of title companies. Talk to them. What can you do that's different than what my lender currently does? Right. Because they might have a specialty that you need, and
they don't know. Like you said, to ask that question, because sometimes they don't know what you need. They just know you're an agent and we're calling, hey, you got business. Can you, well, hey, I need someone, because my guy over here that I use all the time for a lot of other stuff doesn't really have a great condo team.
Yeah.
In their operations.
It's like we talked about, like last week, we were talking about VA, one-time close, construction, and firm loans. Unique product. Not a lot of people offer them. I work with a lot of VA buyers.
Right.
And we were talking about those. And so that instantly it's like, okay, now we have a connection over this, because I know that is something that you can help me with. And that's so that's a relationship I'm going to nurture now, because I know that that's something that I need, because that helps my clients. Right. So that is like, I think it's just asking the questions and being okay asking people the questions. Right. And I mean, I've worked with lenders before that, like, I know a lot about VA because I've bought with VA loans. I've helped a bunch of VA buyers. I know a lot about VA loans, and I've had to correct lenders. I'm the worst at like sending a screenshot of the VA handbook and being like, I'm the worst. But if you're having to do that frequently, maybe it's time to talk to somebody else and see if they're more well-versed in a VA product.
Yeah.
Not everybody does a ton of VA loans, right?
Yeah.
Like every lender's business is a little bit different.
Yeah.
So I think just kind of interviewing, and like you said, it's a little bit like dating. Like, well, what do you do a lot of? What do you not do a lot of? Like I think having those conversations and having those conversations early. You need to have those conversations before you need the people, because once you need them then.
Yeah. Exactly.
You don't want to call 50 lenders to interview people once you already have a client that needs somebody.
What mind boggles me is I still hear the stories today of, because as an agent, this person was, and there's a lot of agents out there in this category, I was so nonchalant in my recommendation, like, well, here's 3. But then when you do that, yeah, maybe they choose one of the 3. But what you do is you open them up to say, well, they weren't really like, this is the best guy for your deal. They're going off and doing their own shopping. Right. And then they end up with some brokerage in California who doesn't, know anything. Or in particular cases that we've kind of working with this morning, DSCR loans. DSCR loans, people, and bank statement loans, these alternative lending products, they're only done by a handful of companies in the country.
Right.
So if that lender does not have the ability to do the underwriting of that product based on that wholesaler's thing, you don't have any control. You're sending it off to that company. You're put in a pipeline, boom. And versus that lender, well, I'll brag about, we do here at Planet, we DSCR, our underwriters have the ability to underwrite that. Now, do they still have to send it off and have that company check off because they're the ones funding it? Yes, yeah. But it's packaged already. It's packaged the way they want it. The documents are in order.
Yeah, and you have an underwriter that you can go talk to, right? Like, if there's somebody you can talk to and be like, okay.
And they got a hotline to get a direct answer because they know they've got that. Do not do a DSCR loan or bank statement loan with one of these big box lenders. They are volume based. They do not have time for DSCR loans, and they really don't want it. That clogs up their pipeline.
Right.
So you need to find, I think we probably mentioned it lunch, the local lender that has this stability, and we're not the only ones in town, but you got to have that relationship. When someone says, I want to do a DSCR loan, or I need to do a bank statement loan, you need to have someone that does these and can stamp them out in a couple weeks, or at least 30 days. Right. Because you send them off big box lender, you call it 60, 90 days.
Yeah, and also, learning about overlays and what overlays your lenders use, because like VA comes up a lot. The VA handbook itself is actually, really lenient loan program as far as who can qualify.
They have open-ended guidelines. It's all up to the lender whether they want to do it or not.
How risky are you?
Exactly.
It's like, how much risk do you want to take?
Yeah.
But knowing your lender's overlays, right? Because, pretty much everybody will do a VA loan for you, right? Yeah. But doing a VA loan for your clients that have a 780 credit score is a little different than doing a VA loan for your clients that have a 600 credit score.
Right.
So you've got to know where you're where your lenders fall with overlays, so you can help advise people. Because how embarrassing to give your client a phone number when they've already entrusted you, told you, hey, I have a 600 credit score, I don't know if this is going to work, and then you give them a lender that has a 620 minimum. Yeah. And then they call and they're like, your credit score is not high enough. That does not feel good for the client. That does not help the client experience. No. So you got to know that.
No, the first thing the actual lender should do, because 620 is such a big score in the FHA and VA category, is see what they can do to get that up 20 points. Maybe it's pay down a credit card because it's going to put the borrower in a much better spot. So that is also another thing you want to add on to. Are they looking to do something? Because that costs money.
Yeah.
And they can't pay for we can rescore them, but the lender has to pay for it. Mm-hmm. Do you have a lender? There are lenders in this town right now and across the country where their loan officers are paying for their own credit reports. So what they do is they talk to the client and ask the client what their credit score is. Well, let me tell you what, you do not know what your credit score is. Mortgage companies, we pull it and that's what it is. And it's probably lower than what you think it is, or what you're getting from Credit Karma. Yeah. Because it's totally different thing. But they're just talking through it, and not, if you go with the lender who, the company's paying for the credit because it's cost of doing business, they're going to pull credit and work with every client that you throw them wherever they're at. Do they need credit help, or maybe they're 680 is the next score, right? And if you're at 679 versus 681, there's a difference. Yeah. And to go and find where we can get those 2 points in the credit score. There's lenders out there, let's say lenders, brokers, loan officers, that because they're paying for the credit report, they're not going to get involved in that because that's extra expense.
Yeah. Well, and your volume-based lenders are not going to get involved in that because they don't have time, right? They're cranking people out.
Well, the smart ones have someone like a team they go send that off to. The thing is, credit reports have gone up $100 in the 20 years I've been at. It's $100 more for the same credit report than it was in 2005 when I started.
Crazy.
Yeah. And I don't know what they're doing differently, and we have better technology.
Yeah. It's actually easier, but
yeah, you would think. But yeah, the cost of those. Now, I'll tell you one thing that hasn't gone up is kind of crazy is appraisals. If you really think about it, what do we charge appraisals in 2005 versus today? And the amount of time an appraiser needs to be apprenticed and the hours they got to put in before they can go out on their own is just unbelievable.
Crazy.
Yeah,
it is.
So we've covered a lot of ground. This was really an informative show because your unique skill set that you have. And just to reiterate, to kind of close on the last topic we were just talking about, agents, build those relationships, go out and, like you said, sit down. And I think one of the challenges is they don't know what to ask. And I can respect that. Yeah. They don't know what to ask. I mean, my wife let this person choose Loan Depot to do their DSCR loan. I'm sorry, Loan Depot is go with the federal government. Yeah. Okay, they're not one. Now, if you just wanted to put 20% down and do a conventional loan, no problem. Do it all day long and fast. But this DSCR loan, too many people involved, and it's a bureaucracy. So she goes, I didn't know that. I said, well, now you do. And hopefully you're telling other agents, you've got to find these, like we said, find your people, find your tribe. There's a lot of people who use that terminology.
Find your tribe. And then my big thing this year has been focusing on, rather than thinking about real estate being a sales industry, let's think about it being a hospitality industry, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we're thinking about it being a hospitality industry, compare that to like your favorite resort. If you're going to your favorite resort, they're not sending you to McDonald's for dinner, right? Like, these are the best restaurants in town. These are the best places to go get a massage. This is the best service that we offer. And keep in mind that when you're sending stuff over to clients, like sending vendor recommendations over to clients, you want it to be the best people in town, which means you have to talk to people in town. Right. You have to interview them. You have to talk to them, because you want to, if the goal is to have that gold standard client experience every single time, you've, one, got to understand the client, and two, understand who you're sending them to.
Now, one of the biggest topics is always the inspector, right? Because there's a price point.
Yes.
And when you say, I'm going to send you the best guy in town, you don't say, hey, he's Mr. X is the best guy in town. Just call him. You have to prep them a little bit, because he's a little more expensive. Yeah. And it's like, hey, I just want to let you know, this is Mr. X. He is the best guy in town. I've used him countless of times. He's going to be probably $100 more. Yep. But I'm going to tell you, your peace of mind is worth that $100.
Absolutely.
You have to prep that. Yeah. It's kind of like, I'm John Maxwell person, and when he's got the 25 ways to influence people, and one of them's introducing them to other people. When you introduce someone to someone else, you kind of talk them up a little bit. Hey, this is so-and-so, and you tell them something about that person that obviously would, might trigger an interest in the person while you're introducing them, right? Yeah. Type of thing. And, you get the $1 million buyer, they're probably not worried about that $100, or they understand the investment that they're doing. Plus they also want to know they're working with the best, right? You have that client. Yes. Where you might have the first time home buyer who's kind of nickel and dime and say, do not step over the quarter to pick up the nickel on this one. Pay the extra $100. It's going to be worth it.
Yeah. My favorite story, I think, like one of my favorite stories in all of my career so far, is we get a lot of pushback on inspections on new construction, right? People think because it's new, it shouldn't need to be inspected. Like, quite literally the furthest from the truth.
The county's going to take care of that for you.
The county's going to take care of it. I'm like, oh gosh, that's not what we're doing here. But so, first time home buyer, tight budget, new construction, sent them the inspector, really got a lot of pushback, right? A lot of pushback. Finally,
pushback from the actual reporter, how much? From
the buyer wanting to do the inspection. Like, it's new construction. Do we really need this inspection? Okay. We have a 12-month warranty. They'll come back out and fix anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
the things you find in the first 12 months. Right. It's the things you don't find.
Right. So they finally agreed to do an inspection. We have an inspection done. Inspector comes out, inspects everything. My preferred inspector does like an infrared thermal scan as part of their inspection. They're doing the scan, and a wall in the primary bedroom closet lights up. And then they put a moisture meter on it. It doesn't look wet. It doesn't feel wet. It's wet. There's moisture back there. It's an exterior wall. It kind of, the primary bathroom, and then it butts up into the closet. That's an exterior wall. Mm-hmm. Well, at some point during building, when a framing nail had gone into a pipe, and the nail was still in the pipe, so it was just dripping, like one single drip, like every few seconds, right? So it wasn't enough to create a puddle, or enough to like saturate the wall.
Not mold yet.
Gonna be mold.
Oh, yeah.
For sure, gonna be mold. Yeah. But not mold yet. Builders, I don't know what it could be. I didn't want to open the wall up, obviously. Finally, we get the wall opened up, and we discover what was going on. Had we used a cheaper inspector that did not include that infrared scan, We would have never caught that.
Yep.
The house would have been full of mold if they had discovered it by 12 months. It's a primary closet. It's going to have clothes in it. So it's not like, and it was carpeted. So it's not like, how long would it have taken them to discover that?
Yeah.
And how much mold would have been in that house before it was discovered?
Yeah.
So, and that's new construction, right? Yeah. So I tell people all the time.
That story right there should, everyone that you consult and wants to buy new construction, just for that story should be signing on. Yes.
Yeah. I don't think I've missed a single new construction inspection since that story. Because that, I mean, it is just like, that would have been thousands and thousands of dollars of remediation, right?
Let alone the headaches. And living in the house, why they got to tear this entire section of the house down to the studs.
Yeah, and remediate mold and, whatever else. And now it's all, closing got pushed back, but it got taken care of before they moved in. And we had a reinspection because obviously my buyers that did not want to pay for an inspection are now wanting to pay for a reinspection.
Right.
They're believers at this point. But it just goes to show that having those relationships, is it worth paying an extra $100 to save thousands down the road?
And the priceless headaches. I don't think people realize the warranty departments in these builders are like trying to get an insurance claim, your house burnt down and trying to get it. We have a house in our neighborhood where it's been over a year. They're just now, I just saw them this morning where they just dropped off some, pallets of wood and so forth, start reframing whatever it's going, because it's only a slab there right now.
Yeah.
But it's been over a year. And I'm sure they fought with the insurance company. I guarantee there's a story there without even knowing. It's the same way with these builders' warranties.
Yes.
They're going to fight you. Because that guarantee would probably cost him $10,000, especially after you move in.
Yeah.
Imagine if there was mold and the year has gone by and now you're having to move out of the house because of the mold until it's remedied. They don't want to pay that. They're not going to say, oh yeah, no problem. That's our fault. We'll take yours a check.
And also we're hoping at that point you haven't made any exterior changes where the builder could be like,
blame you.
That you did that. That wasn't us.
Oh.
And then you have a whole nother can of worms where the builder's not covering it. So we have to hope that there's no exterior changes too.
You're talking about months of headache going back and forth versus right there and then. Hey, we're not closing because there's a leak and you're going to fix it no matter who's going to buy this home.
Yeah.
Unless you can find someone stupid enough to come up here, but you now know it's there. You're now liable for it. Yeah. Now, so they got to fix it. There's just a huge can of worms in that transaction. And trust me, that story is not the only one. I've heard, from trucks driving over the sewer pipe coming out of the house, and it didn't start backing up till they really much, if this inspector wasn't fooling around with his new pipe gadget where he could put the camera down in the pipe and find that it was crushed, it was only time before that was going to back up. That might have happened at 2 years by the time enough stuff got clogged up in there to finally just shut it off. And then
it's all backed up in the house.
It's all backed up in the house. You're having to dig up the front yard. It's not a cheap operation. No. And good luck getting the builder to come out there, especially if they've moved out of the neighborhood. It's one thing if they're still in the neighborhood, maybe you can get something done. But they've gone.
They've gone.
Yeah.
Yep. Tiffany,
is there anything else? Did we not cover? Well, you and I think we could talk for a few hours.
I think we've covered a lot.
I really appreciate, I think, those listening, the whole, I said it once before, your experience being the transaction coordinator, I think one of the challenges that agents have, and this would be a chapter in the book, is the challenges of hitting the lid and not realizing there are people out there that really love transaction coordinating. They're good at it. They're being trained to do at it. They're being interviewed properly for you. And you need to make some calls. Obviously call someone to Sam at Op Suite and amongst the other companies that are out there and interview them. They will open your horizons and really expand your business. Did anyone that you've ever helped from the transaction side ever decline? Go down in business?
No.
If they were at least trying?
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Real estate it's a high turnover industry, and it's for two reasons. One, it's new agents that start and they just never really get traction going.
Right.
But the other one is high producing agents burning out. Don't let yourself get burned out.
Well, I know this is a question because I know we had Corey on and he was talking about the support you guys get at Engel Völkers. Yeah. For an agent out there may be considering looking at another brokerage, knowing what the support people do hands-on because you were involved in that. Explain a little bit what's unique about, not saying Engel, they're the only ones doing it, but there are not many other brokerages that are doing it. Some brokerages are taking a cut and they're not giving you anything.
Right.
Well, what are you getting that really an agent out there who's maybe hit a lid, doing really good business, might obviously should be on Corey's short list, might consider Engel First Coast because of the support staff.
So I tell people all the time that the thing that's unique about Engel and Volkers is that Corey expects excellence out of us, right? The difference is, like, he prepares us to be excellent. And a lot of that is from the support staff. And I mean, if we need a listing agreement, marketing form, plug it in the marketing form, a listing presentation. If we need a listing presentation, plug it in the marketing form, they'll have it ready for us. If we need any like social media marketing, print marketing, buyer consults, anything, we plug it in the marketing form, is on our desk when we get to the office. I can call the office and be like, hey, I have this going on and I am on the road. Can you get a listing presentation prepared for me? I need to drop it off this afternoon. They'll have it ready for me. It's on my desk, ready when I get there. And having that level of support as an agent, if you have that paired with a TC, that burden, like the burden that's taken off of you is just unbelievable.
Can you find other ways, like to accent your marketing, take some time to really strategize your marketing? Because I think a lot of agents are moving at such a fast speed. They're doing all these things themselves. They don't really have time to really actually plan things because they don't have time to actually make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so you can talk to admin, you can talk to them at any point in time. They will do social media for you. Like they'll manage your social media for you if that's what you're wanting them to do. Mm-hmm. We are also rolling out a couple of new programs in the next few months that are just absolute game changers that no other brokerage in the area has, that are just going to really change the game on the agent side of things. So super excited about those. But I think that having the ability to just know, it's honestly like having an assistant on your team that you're just paying for as part of your cut, right?
Yeah.
And I only pay my cut if I'm doing business. Right? If I'm not doing business, I'm not paying my cut. So they want us to succeed because that's how the brokerage succeeds. Yeah. So having that level of support behind you is just incredible.
Yeah. Just talking to Corey a few weeks ago when he was on, in understanding, and then I had some people from Real. I think Real is another, if you're looking at cloud-based brokerages, is doing, because that person that's back there, just like Corey and the owner of Real, they're really thinking, what's the challenge that agents are having? They're hitting this lid. They need support. Well, if they won't go out and get their own, if they want to be with me, I'm going to supply it, because I know as a manager, because really what a broker, if he's managing, if he's really invested in his agents versus just going, hey, go out and get some business and I'm over here if you need me. He's actually forward thinking and going, what obstacles can I get out of the way? So you are more forward facing and spending more time with your clients, spending more time with your follow-ups to get more business from referrals and so forth, because you're nurturing.
Right. Corey tells us all the time that his goal is to get us more time, right? He wants us to have more time. However we want to spend that time, if it's with family, if it's growing your business more, however you want to spend it, he wants you to have it. And he's always forward thinking as to, okay, what can I do to give agents more time? And I also think that a big part of it is, like, I can't imagine ever sitting in Corey's office and being like, I feel tapped. I don't have the support, like, because there's just so much, like, anything that I could possibly need support for, we have it. Like, we have systems in place for client follow-ups and like nurturing client relationships. So we just have so many systems in place that are all so like technology driven and AI driven that they're effortless, right? So it just takes that as a huge burden that's taken off. And obviously Corey can give a pep talk like nobody you've ever met. I'm sure he probably gave it to you too.
His locker room
talks are unmatched. And one thing he said earlier this year is, at one of our sales meetings, was, it's personal. Like, everything in this business is personal, right? And so when it feels heavy, because it's personal, and when it feels great because it's personal.
Right.
But that's been like, I've kind of carried that with me this year, is that when we're doing a high volume of business, it can be really easy to forget that it's personal. But like, just kind of centering yourself back on that and remembering like how much of an honor it is to be with these people during this during this part of their lives, and the support that they give us to make sure that that is just the smoothest transaction, so that when in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, when they're ready to sell, there's no question who they're calling, right? Of course they're calling you back.
I think the attitude, and I'm going to steal it in the military to steal, that in your relationship there, your husband being in the military, I'm sure he can relate to this. If you have soldiers out on the front line, which is your agents, they're out there every day, they're stressing because they're not getting paid unless they got a deal, and they're doing their thing, and they need a supply chain. They need to make sure they have the bullets, the marketing support, what's new coming out, keeping them abreast of what's going on, keep all the intel. And if you are not, that is not a robust support that they feel they can go, you could stick your neck out on the front line, you're not running a successful business. I really wish every broker had this kind of attitude. There's a handful that do in town. I know them. I'm sure there's some I don't know too, but there's also a lot that are not even anywhere near this type of attitude and mindset. And that's what really is refreshing to talk to Corey, because I really feel he is that supply sergeant that's making sure you have all the right gear, you have the right, ammunition, you have the right weapons, and you're out there on the front line battling it every day, obviously acquiring clients, and you have a much more level of confidence because you're getting this support, you're getting what you need.
Yeah. And he has like an absolute knack for just knowing exactly what to say to you when you need to hear it. I mean, like he will just...
That's a special trait.
It is a special trait, especially when you work in a female-dominated industry, right? Like it is a industry where you have, like, I can see as a man how it would be very difficult to know what to say and when.
Right.
But I mean, it's like, I can't tell you how many times I've walked into the office and like, there's always an issue going on, and like, I'll be talking about it, and it's like, sometimes he knows that he's just like, yeah, that's tough. You'll get through it. But then other times he's like, yeah, life's tough. So are you. Get a helmet and get in the game. He's like, and it's like, okay, yes, sir. Like, so he just knows it. Like, because I mean, sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need that. Like, yeah, it's tough. You need to get back in the game. Go.
Yeah. You get the moment of recognition, and then you get the kick in the butt, and you're back out there.
Like, okay, go. Right. And he just has a knack for knowing like exactly what you need to hear when you need to hear it. But then I think the most impressive part to me is just how incredibly forward thinking he is, and like he sees the issues that we're facing. I think a lot of times before we even know that we're facing them, and then by the time we know we're facing them, he's rolling out a solution to them. And
that's leadership.
That is leadership, and I think that is 100% why the brokerage has been as successful as it is, as quickly as it has, because his leadership. I mean, he's 35 years old. Like, it's unbelievable the level of leadership he has for a 35-year-old.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
This was so fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the conversation.
I did too. Thank you.
This may be it for today's episode of Real Estate Excellence, but we both know your pursuit of excellence doesn't stop here. To connect with the best of the best and really take your skills to the next level, join our community by visiting TracyHayesPodcast.com, where you'll meet more like-minded individuals looking to expand their inner circle and their personal experience. That's available at TracyHayesPodcast.com.